finding an oasis in Dubrovnik, a hidden gem market in Rome, and underrated naps. This week, it's all about overtourism and beating the hordes on vacation.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. Destination Eat Drink is for foodies who like to travel and travelers who love to eat. And this week, we're talking about the problem of over-tourism and some tips to beat the crowds in places like Florence, Dubrovnik, and Rome. But first, take a moment to rate and review the podcast. It's a huge help in getting the word out about my little food and travel project. So give up those 5 stars and thank you very much.
Destination Eat Drink.
Tony Mazzaglia is the founder of Taste Florence Food Tours. She's been on the show before, and in this brand new conversation with Tony, she gives some tips on how to best enjoy Florence and avoid the crowds. You know, Florence is one of those cities that's often talked about with over-tourism because you've got these massive blockbuster attractions. You've got the Uffizi, you've got the Duomo, you've got all these things that people want, and they want to go see David. And everyone wants to see those, and they should see those. But I'm just wondering, Tony, if you have tips for us to kind of avoid the crowds, to get around that, to kind of navigate this in a more thoughtful and better way, so that we can enjoy it and also not be part of the problem.
Yeah. How to avoid the crowds. Okay, first of all, a lot of people that make a mistake of saying, oh, I only need 2 nights in Florence. Not if you really want to enjoy Florence. If you want to be stressed out, 2 nights is great. But if you want to really enjoy Florence and relax, I would recommend a minimum of 5 nights. Obviously, more would be better. I mean, I've been there for over 2 decades, and I still haven't gotten to see every nook and cranny. One thing is the crowds are primarily during the day because of the fact that we have tour buses come in, large tour groups of maybe 20 people, maybe even 30, roaming the streets with, a tour guide in front of them with the flag, and they've got headsets on, and they're all kind of just wandering around. They've gotten off a bus. They might not even know where they are. Sadly, this happens. And then we also have people coming in from the cruise ports in Livorno and La Spezia. And they're same thing, 20, 30 people, headphones, flags. So you have a lot of mass tourism, and that tends to be an issue. I know also in Barcelona, they have a huge problem. Yeah. It's even worse for them because the ships pull up to Barcelona. At least we have that hour buffer before they get here. So my advice is stay in Florence and be strategic with your plans. Kind of shrug and know that during the day there's going to be crowds. It's going to be a little frustrating. But after 5 or 6 p.m., when everybody has to scurry off to their buses, then the streets are going to be yours again. I mean, I have to be honest, most of us who live and work in Florence, as much as we love it, if we can, we don't hang out in the historic part of town until the evening, or at least the late afternoon, when possible, because we know that it's going to be less crowded. Just like the Ponte Vecchio, that beautiful, famous historic bridge where we sold jewelry, right, in Florence. People come from all over the world to see the Ponte Vecchio. Your average Florentine will avoid walking over the Ponte Vecchio during the day because we know it's going to be crowded, and there's going to be those illegal guys selling posters, and there's going to be people bumping into you and taking photos. So you just know and you plan around it. So do the same thing, instead of trying to see the Ponte Vecchio during the day, go early morning. If you're a jogger, more power to you. Wish I had that self-control. But great time of day, because you're already up doing your thing. Jog over the Ponte Vecchio when it's not crowded yet. Or in the evening, although in the evening, we tend to have some like live performers that'll come out and sing well, not every night, but during the summer a lot. They'll come out and play some music on the Ponte Vecchio, and a lot of spectators will gather. So it can get crowded at night too, but not half as bad as during the day, and not every night. So I'd say that sweet spot, like 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. is a good time to cross over the Ponte Vecchio and get your photo. So that's one thing. That's time of day is everything when you're visiting. For food, because, again, we got that little window of time. You can have your lunch and dinner, and then they close in between. And then also for just walking around and enjoying the city, kind of plan around it. Consider doing what the locals used to do. A lot of people think that Italians take that nap after lunch. We don't really get to do that anymore unless you go further south, like where my relatives are in Sicily. It's not really a thing anymore for most Italians. We have a shorter lunch break and so forth. But that tradition was brilliant. You would have on a hot day, if you're going to visit in July, it's going to be hot. So you're going to want to get up early, enjoy the city until about 10:30. And then it's already going to be flaming hot because the city is made out of stones and there isn't a lot of shade. Mm-hmm. And so once those stones heat up until the middle of the night, when they've cooled back down again, they're just radiating heat in all directions. So plan to visit the city early, like maybe the walking around part early, get to a museum. After that first museum, go have lunch. After lunch, go back to your hotel and take a nap. You're in Italy, enjoy.
Naps are so underrated. I love taking the afternoon nap when I'm on vacation back in the hotel, just like chill for a little bit. Or, like we talked about, go see a movie in an air-conditioned movie theater.
Yes, exactly. And although we do have to talk about that because a lot of the movie theaters close in the summer because air conditioning is expensive in Italy. So a lot of the movie theaters will close. But this is another great thing. I'm glad you brought that up. So in Italy, most movie theaters will close when it's, I would say around June, late June. I can't remember exactly when it happens. And then there are outdoor cinemas.
Oh.
And you go at night and you sit outside. It's not a drive up or anything like that. It's a walk up, and they've got seating, and there's one in almost every neighborhood. And they do also set them up outside of the Uffizi. That long part of the Uffizi that goes from Palazzo Vecchio toward the river. They'll set up seating in there, and they'll set up a screen, and they'll have movies there. They'll sometimes do it up at Piazzale Michelangelo. So those are the ones that are going to be more accessible for you if you're visiting Florence and don't know the neighborhoods. But then in all the little sleepy neighborhoods right outside of Florence, and I mean, they're still inside Florence, but outside of the center, like Piazza Dalmazia and San Niccolò and what's the other one? San Frediano. Like every neighborhood is going to have an outdoor cinema. And that's one of my favorite things to do in the summer in Italy. Because you will be at home. Up until recently, I didn't have air conditioning. I made it till the ripe age of about 45, I think, before having air conditioning.
Wow. You're braver than me, man.
It was rough, and I was grumpy, let me tell you. But what happens is it forces you to reinvent your living space. So and that's what Italians do. Because of the hot, why do we eat dinner so late? We eat dinner in Florence at 7:30 p.m. But if you go further south, Rome, Sicily, they're eating dinner at 8, 9 p.m. in the summer because you got to wait until it cools down. Otherwise, you're like having a sauna and eating dinner at the same time.
No fun.
Yeah. And that's why we eat outdoors. It's not just because it's romantic. It's because it's out of necessity. Because the wind the breeze picks up and the temperature starts to drop, and it's going to drop faster outside than it does inside your non-air conditioned house. So anyway, that's like a whole other thing. But if you come, and you most likely will come when it's crowded for a reason. It's crowded because that's when people can get off work, right? Or because the weather is good. So if you come essentially between mid-April to mid to late October, it's going to be pretty crowded. People are always surprised that it's crowded in September and October. And I'm like, that is the peak of all peak. So I'm always surprised that people are surprised. You know what I mean? Because I know, because I live there. But why would you want to be there in September and October? They're harvesting the grapes. They're making the new wine.
Yes.
They're making the new olive oil at the end of October, and it's delightful. They're roasting chestnuts out on the street. There's so many fabulous things that are going to make up for the fact that you're bumper carring around during the day there. But if you really hate crowds, I totally respect it because I'm not a big fan myself, then go in the winter. Go to Florence. The sweet spot's going to be really November, December, because it's going to start to die down, but it isn't going to be frigid cold. It doesn't really get horribly cold. And by horribly cold, I mean, it might snow once a year in Florence. I'm not talking Boston or Chicago or Antarctica. But cold enough that it bothers you, that's going to be January and February. February tends to be the coldest month. And so, if you don't mind the cold, go in January and February, you will have the city to yourself. In Florence. Now, if you went to Venice, that's a different story because people are already starting to come into Venice because of the carnival, the pre-carnival celebrations. So the winter in Venice is not low season, but in Florence it is. So the city, to crack down on over-tourism, two things. First of all, they're no longer allowing those little lock boxes. Like, how like realtors have a lockbox?
Yeah. Or for Airbnb, sometimes they use them.
Yeah, exactly. So for that reason, precisely because of Airbnb and similar platforms, they have outlawed the lock boxes because when you're in the historic part of town, you'll actually see lock boxes attached to those beautiful old iron grates on windows or attached to those beautiful iron rings that everyone asks me what they are. And they're basically where people used to tie their horses up. Okay. So we're talking these beautiful parts of the architecture that go back centuries. They've been inundated with these lock boxes. So the city has outlawed them and a lot of people didn't take them down. And about 2 days ago, I saw an article. They were out with lock taking them down. The city was.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they want people to, first of all, it's a eyesore, and it's interfering with the traditional architecture, but also it prevents people from being remote landlords, if you will.
Right. Exactly.
So you have to let the people in yourself in a way, I guess. Is that part of what they're trying to get rid of?
That's the gist of it. I haven't read up on that side of it. I know for sure because of the aesthetic reason. And then also, those platforms have, ruined life for locals that need to rent because all of the rental prices have shot up.
Right.
All over the world, right? And so that's, I think they're also trying to make it more, and I think they're trying to make it more difficult so that because it's like, okay, if you're going to make it hard for the locals, then we're going to make it hard for you to make it hard for the locals.
Yeah.
Right?
So we'll see if this works or not. It'll be interesting to monitor it for a while and see what happens because all these different cities are trying to find tools to kind of bring life back to their city center instead of making them be playgrounds for tourists. Lisbon's facing the exact same thing, and they're trying different tactics in order to do that as well. So
Portugal is. I mean, it's so popular right now, and so many people are moving to Portugal. And
yes,
I can only imagine how much it's changed. How long have you been there now? 2 or 3 years?
A little over 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
3.5 almost.
And I can imagine. Has it already changed since you got there?
Quite a bit. I try to be level-headed about this because if I start pointing fingers, they can easily start pointing fingers at me. I'm part, in a way, I'm part of the problem. Although I try to be, respectful and, I'm not here to change the Portuguese culture. Like I say, I want to bend to Portugal. I don't want Portugal to bend to me. But, there's no doubt that the influx of foreigners, not just Americans, but other people as well, into Portugal is changing the face of Portugal. It just is. And, cultures change over time anyway. So, you can't be on the other side and say, well, we don't want anything to change ever.
Right.
then,
Right.
Then you're a Luddite. And so anyway, it's really fascinating to see how cities try to balance these things in order to make it attractive for people to come and visit while still maintaining a environment where people can live and, have their life and, enjoy themselves and not be overrun by this tourism. So it's a fine line, as you well know, Tony, because you're in hospitality and tourism. So
right, exactly. I want visitors, but I, of course, prefer respectful visitors.
Yeah.
And and there are things that we have to do to make it attractive for visitors to come, but without making it unattractive for locals to stay.
Elizabeth Becker is an award-winning journalist who has written extensively about Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge genocide. She's also the author of Overbooked, The Exploding Business of Travel and Tourism. She tells me about the problem of over-tourism and cruise ships.
What I would add to this very strongly is to prepare. Now, just take the Louvre. Most of those guided trips, it's what I call drive-by tourism. People don't stand for more than 2 minutes in front of a painting and then they're gone and there's no idea what it was. But you have to, if you prepare, if you read books, if you decide that, okay, at the Louvre, I don't care about this, that, or the other. I only want to see Syrian art. I only want to see Egyptian art. I only want to see French art of the early 17th century. But do your homework, pick your choice. You're going to have a really great experience. And then you can avoid that stuff. Another thing is just generally not to do a lot more than just read a guidebook. The people who rely on, those pour everything into one trip tourism groups are the ones who get cheated by the companies because it is, as I say, drive-by tourism, and cheating themselves because they don't get a chance to really get involved. So the more superficial the planning, I would say the more superficial the trip and the more likely that you are contributing to over-tourism. Now, another thing you could do is stay in one place. Don't try to do more than one city or one province or whatever, and explore that place slowly. That way, you're also going to spend more money locally because over-tourism is also it's unpopular with the residents because generally the money doesn't stay in the local economy. So that's always good, is to stay in one place and explore it slowly. And then think about it. Maybe when you're at what do you like to do when you're home? When you're home, do you go to church? If you don't, when you go to visit churches overseas or mosques or whatever, do a little homework on that. Music, maybe you just like popular music, but you're going to go to Vienna. Are you going to go to classical music? Maybe you'll listen a little bit and prepare yourself for that. And then, goodness gracious, maybe you'll learn a little bit of the foreign language. So,
God forbid, right?
one of the things I did for my book was I went and read, and the National Geographic is headquartered here in Washington, and I went to their nice library and read their very first travel books. Their travel books had nothing to do with where you stay and what you eat. Nothing. It was all, this is where you are, this is the history, this is the way you see this, that, and the other. It was just rich with the culture and the society. There were also pages of local language, and at the very end, there were a couple places to stay, and that was it. So that's how much travel has changed.
One of my favorite tips is that when you go, before you plan, you talked about planning. Yes. Before you go, one of my favorite things to do is look up some of the literature and film that's related to the place you're going. And by film, I don't mean like a travel log. I mean an actual film, a cinematic piece. When we were in Sicily, the first thing I did was pick up a copy of The Leopard, and when it made our visit there so much richer because we could understand the fall of the royal families and things like that, rather than just, there's another palace.
Excellent, excellent. Novels, I think, are the best. Then history books, then modern politics. We have a really good independent bookstore here in DC called Politics and Prose. And part of my research was just to go to Politics and Prose and see, okay, how many books do we have on European history versus European guidebooks? And it was astonishing. A handful on European history and wall of European guidebooks. The guy who runs it is a buddy. And I said, look what's happened. He says he can't believe it either. So we need a little more depth. In fact, if you go to Sicily, I have a cookbook that I read before I went there so I could understand the food.
That's a great point, because I did the same thing too. I wish I could remember the name of it, but there's a woman who's been an expat from, is it England?
Something like, yeah, I think we saw the same. It was an expat.
Yeah. And her book, it's a cookbook, yes, but it's also a cultural guide of Sicily. You mentioned some factors, Elizabeth, that are contributing to this over-tourism, and you mentioned the rise of the global middle class. Anyone who's traveled internationally has seen this. One thing that I always point out is the rise of the cruise ship culture. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I did a whole big, long, fat chapter of my book about cruise ships. And no one less than Arthur Frommer agrees with you and me. The cruise ship culture, I call the chapter Destination Nowhere, because it doesn't matter where you're going. Your whole experience is being in a rather often crowded cruise ship where the entertainment has nothing to do with wherever you're traveling. And I took several trips because I was writing the book, and I don't believe in just taking it secondhand. I have to do it. And I was appalled, one, that the entertainment was all about, it was like being on a game show. And then secondly, that they had repeated lectures about shopping this was in Cozumel and Belize, about shopping in chain foreign shops and warning the tourists not to buy locally, warning them about locals as if they were going to rip them off. And it was astonishing. Now, on the other hand, then I took the other extreme, the wonderful Lindblad cruises that were the opposite. They were small boats, and yes, they were significantly more expensive. However, by the end of the day, I had an incredible experience through Costa Rica with Lindblad that I will never forget. It was all ecotourism. There was none of that game show stuff. When we were on the ship, which was not often because they really believed in taking you on board, we got to see things no one else was able to see because it was environmentally friendly. Small ship with only 50 people on it. It was a once in a lifetime. And one of those versus 5 of the other cruise ships, any day, you take the one of those. Quality. So yes, the cruise ship is a tour guide at the worst, and the environmental degradation is serious. You just saw another report out of Europe that cruise ships pollute the air when they're docked. Right. More than 20,000 cars, one of the smaller cruise ship. And then we get Carnival just not even a month ago was the president of Carnival Cruises appeared in court in Miami because they continue to disregard pollution of water rules. So it's again not regulated, and I think it's not a good tourism experience because you don't really see foreign travel. And if you want to have a week partying up like that, why not just go to one resort and stay there instead of polluting the ocean and the airways?
Rob Rose is the creator and host of the award-winning TV show Raw Travel. He tells me about visiting Dubrovnik and how he found a nearby oasis. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about Croatia because it's a place that holds a warm spot in my heart. My novel was set partially in Croatia, not in Dubrovnik. And I was inspired from a trip to Croatia to write about it. I haven't been to Dubrovnik. I spent my time in Zagreb, which you've been to, and the Istrian Peninsula, not far from Venice, and Trieste, Italy. But I want to talk about Dubrovnik because I haven't been there. What were your impressions going to Dubrovnik? Granted that they may be a little bit skewed because it was during times of COVID.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I had not been to Croatia before, even though I'd heard tremendous things, was I was concerned about over-tourism. And the whole idea behind raw travel is to zig while everyone else zags. I don't want to go to Venice, Italy, and be part of the crowd that causes issues for the locals there. I live near Times Square, New York. I am very familiar what it feels like when 60 million clueless people come in and clog up the streets, drive the prices up, and you as a local, even me as a travel guy, resent them. So I stayed away from Croatia and places like Dubrovnik, the Dalmatian coast, because of that. However, I thought this would be a good window of opportunity given the pandemic. And we have to strike that balance, right? Because Dubrovnik is super dependent on travel and tourism. The problem becomes when people do that with no brakes. They just allow, it's full speed ahead all the time. Well, if you allow that, it just has a self-fulfilling prophecy of becoming over-touristed. So Dubrovnik has struggled with that. And so I wanted to see for myself what their challenges were. Is there a responsible, sustainable way to travel to a place like Dubrovnik? So the first thing I'll tell you is there's a reason everybody wants to go there. It's gorgeous.
Right.
It's an old historic city. There's no cars allowed. You're walking upstairs. It's like literally taking a trip back in time. It's also very fun. There's a lot of great food, a lot of great drink. But the problem that they've had in the past is these cruise ships would come in, dump their passengers out for a day, and then go back home that day. And so these day trippers causing all kinds of problems, and some, self-induced, like the restaurants, for example, would care less. Some of them, not all of them, obviously, but some of them would care less. They cater to those day trippers. So the quality of food is not good. The price is high. They gouge the customer because they're never going to see them again.
Right.
You have to worry about repeat experiences. And so if you happen to be unlucky in there when those day trippers invade the town, literally there's two entrances to this medieval city. And sometimes they say it would take an hour in line to get into the city. I'm like, forget that, man. I won't even stay in a velvet rope to the hottest VIP club in New York City. I haven't done that in my 20s. I wouldn't even do that. I'm not going to do it now. So what I found was that, number one, they've taken steps to limit the number of cruise ships that can come by. Number two, because this was post-pandemic, it felt crowded to me, but for them, it was not crowded. It was just crowded because I was used to isolation. And then the third thing I found, and what we focus on in the episode, is this area of Dubrovnik outside of the old city called Gruž, where actual locals still live. Because in the old city, a consequence of over-tourism, just as in Venice, is that the locals have fled. They leave. Who wants to live in a tourist? You're being photographed and filmed, and people are annoying if they're a traveler. If you're just surrounded by tourists all day, throngs of tourists. And so, if you go and it's within walking distance, you can walk it in about 30 to 45 minutes from the old town, which I did, and I just found all this cool stuff happening there. There was like a local brewery called Dubrovnik Brewery. There was a vegetarian restaurant. The guy, really caters to locals, but there's a lot of the more, I would say, savvy travelers who stayed in Gruž as opposed to the old town. I did not. I stayed in Old Town. And then there's like a guy who did a DIY museum about communist history in Croatia and the former Yugoslavia. And he did it himself because there's no state-sponsored museum. Because it's kind of a taboo topic. And so I interviewed those folks and met them and just had the best time ever because I was outside of the tourism zone. And I had the best of both worlds. I was staying in the old town. I got to see all those sites. And then I got to go to Gruž and see the Port Gruž area which ironically is where the cruise ships come in a lot of times. But they weren't in at that time. And I had a really cool experience, and they're really working hard to get people to not just come in for a day, to not just go to the old town, and to do it in a more responsible way. And that's what we're trying to do on our show, is to encourage people, go to Dubrovnik, but here's how you can do it and be responsible about it.
Katie Parla is a New York Times bestselling author, podcaster, TV host, and tour guide in Italy. Her latest book is about her adopted hometown and is called Rome, A Culinary History. Katie tells me about some of the lesser touristed neighborhoods in Rome. Everyone has Rome on their bucket list, which is a great thing. But I think one of the problems with that is everyone goes to the same places that they have to check off, whether it's Sistine Chapel, the Colosseum, Trevi Fountain, and they just trot from these one required location to another without really getting a feel for Rome itself, which is why I'm so glad to be able to talk to you on the podcast today. Rome's a huge city. It's the largest city in Italy, and it's made up of all these fantastic neighborhoods that maybe people don't get to go to. So I thought first and foremost, let's talk about some of these neighborhoods in Rome that you love.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I love talking about the non-central neighborhoods in Rome and the central pockets that are off the radar in spite of their strategic location near monuments. You're right. Rome is a place where the tourist path is well trodden. But the great thing is that the center of town that has all these wonderful monuments is pretty compact. And the rest of the city, which accounts for well over 90% of the entire area, has amazing neighborhoods. One of my favorite is Monteverde Vecchio. I'm a little bit biased because I've lived in that neighborhood for 6 years.
Right, cool.
I don't own any real estate, so I'm not trying to inflate prices by promoting it. But it's this really gorgeous residential neighborhood. The name Monteverde means the green mountain. It's more of a hill. Vecchio means old. And by Roman standards, it's not old at all. It was developed mainly in the teens and 20s. And is one of the neighborhoods that has both apartment blocks as well as villas, single-family home and duplex villas. It's lush, it's green, and it's home to the sprawling Villa Pamphili public park, the largest in the city. I'm obsessed with it. It's amazing.
Cool.
And it's a great place to picnic. Another spectacular neighborhood is actually in the shadow of the Vatican. Just a couple of blocks from the busiest location in town is the Trionfale Market, which is the heart of the Trionfale district. And that's where I always start my mornings, even though I live in Monteverde Vecchio, which has 2 public markets of its own. I constantly go to the Trionfale Market because it is huge and sprawling and wonderful and has some of my favorite farm stalls and great fishmongers and just an overall amazing vibe. And it's close to cool, delicious food that I want to eat at Panificio Bonci and Pizzarium. There's a great deli called La Tradizione. There's an awesome wine shop. It's kind of my favorite food destination. And, we can talk more about this, but in Rome, food isn't only consumed sitting down at a long restaurant meal. There's a lot of stuff that you eat on the fly. I love getting pastries at Panificio Bonci or roast pork sandwich, heading to Pizzarium, having pizza by the slice, and then, maybe save a full meal for dinner.
Okay, that's the legendary Katie Parla. Her new book, Rome, A Culinary History Cookbook and Field Guide to the Flavors That Built a City, is available at her website, katieparla.com. Buy it from there and you'll get a signed copy. Book a tour in Florence at tasteflorence.com. Elizabeth Becker's website is elizabethbecker.com. And Rob Rose's show, Raw Travel, is at rawtravel.tv. You can also watch his incredible documentary, My Summer in Ukraine, on YouTube. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, Sauvignon Blanc on a tiny island, a short ferry ride from Auckland, New Zealand, the native grapes of Veneto, and the underrated Beaujolais region of France as we talk all about wine. Don't miss that. Until then, there's plenty of foodie travel at destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a story about a bakery with a bouncer. You can read about that and see some funny pictures at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. I just posted a new video as well. This one is about some of the best coffee drinks in Italy, from single origin espresso to decadent coffee drinks infused with alcohol and cream and chocolate and all kinds of good stuff. Watch that by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or go to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@destinationeatdrink946. You can also support Destination Eat Drink at Buy Me a Coffee. There you can toss me a couple of bucks or download one of my Foodie Travel Guide ebooks. There's several new ones, including Barre and Lecce in Italy. Check those out at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.